All right, so let's kick into Hong Kong. So let's remind everybody the contextual debate around Hong Kong very quickly. It was the 1800s. There was a bit of a war between the British Empire and the Chinese, and the Chinese lost.
China was very arrogant in the 1800s, and they were the richest country in the world. They became very mercantilist, and they didn't want to trade with the British, and the British fought their way in. And yeah, they had the Opium War, and then most people understand what happened with Hong Kong. It was handed over for a 99-year lease, and in 1997 it was handed back. And at that point, things had changed. Britain was the one of the most wealthiest countries in the world, and Hong Kong was still in the 90s. The Hong Kong people were superior to the Chinese people just across the border. There are some similarities to what's happening in Australia right now. I'd like to go back to the 1997 and try to put yourself into the mindset of what it would be like to be a Hong Kong man working in the finance industry. Just say you got yourself a proper job, you got a Western education, you speak English, you have access to the world. You are effectively superior in almost every facet to the Chinese people directly across the border. Keep in mind, Shenzhen was a jungle at that stage. Guangzhou, people couldn't even afford to have a bicycle. So effectively, the Hong Kong people in 1997. I hope my Hong Kong friends out there don't take this wrong, but they were very arrogant. They thought that they will always be superior to the Chinese people across the border. There's another thing I'd like to touch on. We're still in the 1997, but I'd like to go all the way back to 1950 after China. To American people out there, I don't want to insult them either, but after China kicked your ass in Korea and booted you all the way back to take back North Korea, and General MacArthur wanted to nuke Beijing, and Truman fired him. China realized that they could take on not only the biggest military in the world, but the allies as well, and still defeat them right on their border. So then the Chinese contacted the British and said, look, if you don't give us back Hong Kong, we're going to do what just happened to North Korea. We're going to take back Hong Kong. So the British, so not many people know about this or talk about this, but the British were scared. They said, look, we're 1997, we're going to give it back to you. Like, just let us sort it out. We're heading back to you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
In
and
between, in between there was the Vietnam War, which was against China as well, which people don't really piece together. So in the 70s, that was against China as well. So we need to understand that there's this huge strategic game that's been playing out for a very long time, almost 70 years now. And now we're up to 1997, and the Hong Kong people were effectively superior to the Chinese people across the border, and when you gotta understand that politics is far more powerful than how rich you are, and the finance industry never gets that. Our Australian finance industry is full of arrogant people who think the same way that this guy, Hong Kong guy back in 1997, will be thinking as well. You see, imagine if I had a conversation, we went back in time, I had a conversation with this Hong Kong guy, his wife's pregnant, and I told him, your child that's being born right now probably won't finish university and will be protesting in the streets. Right now, out in Causeway Bay or in Central, the streets will be shut down and the West will have no power to protect your child right now. He would never believe you. He would call you an idiot the same way that I tell the finance industry, which is full of dummies right now in Sydney, Australia, Martin Place, those dummies down there right now, that your children are going to be suffering for when China takes over. These same dummies are going around talking about, like the ASX, and they're reading graphs, the same thing. Now, since then, China spent all this time building up Shenzhen, and Shenzhen went from a jungle. Shenzhen was a jungle in the 90s. Shenzhen is now a competitor, a direct competitor to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong went from contributing upwards of 80% of direct foreign investment into China to only contributing 3% of China's entire just they're almost irrelevant. So it's gone from the Hong Kong people being so arrogant. Please don't take me the wrong way. It is a little bit of arrogance on behalf of the Hong Kong people in the 1990s, but from being arrogant and talking down to the Chinese people to now the Chinese people saying, well, Shenzhen's more powerful than you, and talking down to the Hong Kong people, and now they're protesting in the streets. So this is like a little bit of an overboost. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, that's perfect. That's a perfect example, because it's going to be that way apparently until 2047. But the people there, they're protesting. This didn't just begin now. There was the umbrella protest, which I know can you just back the people up and explain to people what is the umbrella protest and why is it relevant to what we're about to talk about?
Okay, so there was, I think Joshua Wong called it scholarism, and what it was the propaganda that was being pushed into the schools all the way through to the primary schools, and you see the finance industry was still arrogant. They just thought, oh, okay, we'll give them we'll let them take this or let them change that. Doesn't matter. We're still superior Hong Kong people. Even today. Let's just be honest. I know Hong Kong people, I know Shenzhen people, I know Guangzhou people. There's still a lot of arrogance. Like, I'm not crossing the border into the mainland. It's dirty over there. I'm a superior Hong Kong person, and please don't take me wrong. The reason why, don't take this the wrong way to the Hong Kong people that might be listening to this. The reason why I'm saying this is I'm trying to point out the arrogance in the finance industry in Australia. You see, it's not like
the financial industry will sell their own mother for $1.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and they will sell their own children the same way the Hong Kong people accidentally, through their own arrogance and superiority complex, they've sold out their own children. Now their children are in the streets. Fighting for their rights.
And Dave, you're a prophet, because you're trying to say to the people, listen, because there's this great debate in Australia. It's balancing economic with China and security issues with America. And you're saying that the economic arrogance are in the business of selling their own posterity. Yes?
Yeah. So to lead up to, it's like the boiling frog. Although if you actually put a frog in warm water, it jumps out a lot faster than it starts boiling. But anyway, it's a good metaphor for what's happening right now. So they just slowly took pieces by pieces away from the Hong Kong people, and then the Hong Kong people started to panic. Next thing you know, you've got 3,000 Hong Kong lawyers out in the streets, but it's too late, because you didn't set the rules in 1997 when you had the power. And this is what I'm trying to say to the Australian people. You're not setting the rules in Australia before it's too late. And keep in mind, to whoever's listening out there, I want you guys to understand that I'm not talking about what I wish would happen. I'm not talking about morals and what should be happening. I'm just saying what is happening and what did happen. And the same thing's happening in Australia, and I've built this into my overarching theory. My overarching theory is that the dummies that run Australia are not going to change. They are going to end up in the exact same situation, and that's why people are going to end up in the streets. But it's not like Hong Kong. It's not so compact that you can't break them up. Australia is easily divided and easily ruled. Keep in mind, talking about Shenzhen and Sydney CBD, Shenzhen and Hong Kong. Sydney CBD, China's already building their own Shenzhen in Sydney. Now, not many people are aware of that.
This is your big theory. Drum roll, please.
It's a very, very serious thing, and I feel like I'm the only person in Australia that's noticed it. but 15% of the entire GDP of Australia comes from Sydney CBD all the way up to a city called Chatswood, which has been built. And if you get on the hill and you film down into Chatswood, it is like this city in the middle of nowhere. So this city in the middle of nowhere called Chatswood is just northwest of Sydney CBD, and and it is being built by the Chinese Communist Party. All of the money has come from China. Now the people there, it's not from Hong Kong people. It's from mainland Chinese people. They speak Mandarin. There's a lot of money going into Chatswood, and it's effectively the Shenzhen to Hong Kong of Sydney CBD of Australia, and this is the most wealthiest couple kilometers in the entire Australia. So nobody's really acknowledged that that's happening, but this city has just popped up out of nowhere with massive high-rise buildings. It looks like Hong Kong.
I don't want to. I don't want to name names because that's dangerous in this world. But people out there, you should think about this. There's a city being built with ostensibly Chinese money, and there's elections in Australia that are happening with the Liberal Party and the Labor Party and Sam Dastyari. And we don't know. You don't know, people. So this is something that you have to start looking at. And Hillary Clinton came down to this country for a reason. And she said they know what's going on and that we need to pick a side. We need to pick a side. We need to choose now. Are we with China or are we with America? Are we going to go to war with America or are we going to go to war with China? That's the only option. We don't have any other options. We've run out of time on this. And Hong Kong is the battlefield. It's the battleground. And Australia, you have to wake up and you have to start choosing. Do you want to be with America or do you want to be with China? Because right now this prostitute-like relationship with both is not gonna work. And all of the countries in the region, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, everybody, they're all starting to choose, and we're sitting down here trying to prostitute ourselves, and it's not going to work much longer.
Yeah, a lot of people, whenever you go to a think tank and you surround yourself with the business community, they instantly say, why can't we just continue? We're in a lot of debt at the moment. Why can't we trade with one and have security from America? This is all built into my theory as well. I already know how this is going to play out. And Canada is the perfect example. You see, they arrested the CFO of Huawei. And Canada thought that it would be a small thing. But during that period, America was starting to worry about Canada getting all close to China and trading with China. So what do? They make you do something that makes China angry at you. They make you do something you think is irrelevant, and then China just identifies you as an enemy. And so all of those dummies in the finance industry that think that they can keep investing in China and you're gonna you're gonna get some good returns, it's not going to play out. If you're thinking you're going to get some cheap furniture and sell it in your furniture store, it's not going to work anymore. But and this has recently happened because Australia has just committed to helping blockade Iran in Hormuz, which effectively makes us as much of an enemy to China as possible, because 1/3 of the world's oil goes through there, and a lot of that oil goes to China. And part of the reason why Iran is an enemy to the United States is because Iran wants to sell their oil in gold and they don't want to sell their oil in American dollars. And it's the exact same thing that's happening in Venezuela right now. And Australia, whether we realize it or not, we just made the government of China our enemy. So we've effectively chosen the team. We can't play Switzerland here because we're not in a position to be Switzerland. That's the situation we're in. So if you're one of those finance guys that think that you're going to be able to trade with China and you're going to be able to rely on trade with China, you're not. And if you're not preparing for it, you're a dummy.
The executive president is chosen by a small elite, not by a democratic mass, and that small elite seems to be very pro-China, right?
Kerry Lamb, yeah, Kerry Lamb. But they've always had the Hong Kong people have been complaining about who's in charge for a very long time, and yeah, Kerry Lamb is. Although they say that Kerry Lamb has the ability to quash the extradition bill, the extradition bill did make sense from a Chinese point of view, because when you look at what happened after the CFO of Huawei being arrested in Canada, China arrested 5 Canadians, and some are still in jail today, and some people have actually disappeared from Canada as well. People who are just innocent that had nothing to do with anything at all. And so then China started looking, okay, well, where's the largest population of Westerners that we can get our hands on? An extradition bill for Hong Kong perfectly meets their needs. So by putting in this extradition bill in Hong Kong, they have access to a lot of Americans, a lot of Australians, a lot of people from the UK, Canada, etc. Because a lot of the people that that China may want to get their hands on, they're not going back to China ever again because it's too dangerous at the moment.
There's been a lot of encroachment, and it's built up to this point where China has put troops on the border. They're running military drills. Can you tell us about that? Why are they running military drills right on the border of Hong Kong?
Well, I'm not in Hong Kong, and I'm not in Shenzhen, so I don't really know firsthand what's going on, and that's why I've got your reporter over there. But the mentality of the Chinese people is that they're losing face. So face is very important to the Chinese people, and if they were to Tiananmen Square style, which everybody's saying at the moment, I'm not saying anything new, but if they were to do something in Hong Kong drastic like that, it could affect China's economy and their international reputation, which is already quite tarnished because they're an authoritarian state. But from the point of an Australian and Team Blue,
yep.
It's actually a really good thing that they keep doing such stupid things. And the Hong Kong people, I know it sounds awful, but if they were to storm Hong Kong, it would be arguably the best thing for the West, because we are trying to cut China off. We're trying to destroy their economy. We're trying to cut them off from the West and economically destroy them. And this is just another one of those moves where China, the government makes another terribly bad decision, which makes the entire country look bad. To put your troops there it's outrageous to think that they have troops on the border. They're arresting the protesters, but allowing violence on the pro-government side to get away with it. So they're selectively prosecuting people.
Anything else you want to talk about on that? Because in the final few minutes, I want to talk about your experience with John Mearsheimer.
Okay. Well, in Australia, there's been, I've recently found some footage of a Taiwanese protester in Town Hall, Sydney, Australia, holding a big sign saying Taiwan support Hong Kong. And he was bashed by some Chinese people, and they filmed it and put it on WeChat. So I got that footage. I'll be putting that on a video soon too. There's been a lot of violence against people that speak out against Hong Kong in Australia, and the Australian police are afraid to do anything about it. And this is where I talk about us setting the rules early while we still control the place. We're not doing that, and I don't think we will set the rules. It's always going to be one-sided. So eventually, the Australian people and the future terrorists of Australia will be 18-year-old white men running the streets, because our freedoms will be taken from us. And it's exactly the same situation that happened in Hong Kong, 1997. This is our 1997 moment. So if you're having children right now, they will be in the streets, almost 100%, unless something changes. Also, I'd like to point out the fact that since this has happened, America has sold tanks and fighter jets to Taiwan. We're gearing up. We're gearing up for something very serious, and America realizes that China's going to keep expanding and keep pushing their neighbors around. So America has just sold a lot of arms to Taiwan, and subsequently China has gone around and picked out neighbors of ours and sold submarines to multiple countries, namely, say, Thailand and many other countries in Asia. And the two teams are lining up for something very serious. And it just seems like step by step we're heading towards something that doesn't seem to be able to be stopped. There's no diplomacy. It just seems like we're just heading towards something very serious at the moment. So there's a clear Indonesia's being armed, so it's Australia and Indonesia, it's Thailand and Singapore, it's Taiwan and Japan versus China. It's India and Pakistan. The battle lines are being drawn, and it doesn't seem like anyone seems to be talking about it or coming up with proper solutions. The only solution I'm hearing from countries is, oh, we're just going to step back and let it happen. There's no diplomacy. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that.
That's jam-packed with information. So we've got arms deals, we've got countries maneuvering against each other in a very realist way. Taiwan is obviously a big powder keg. I mean, Hong Kong could light the fire, but Taiwan is the prize, if you know what I mean. So you went and saw a speech by John Mearsheimer, the great John Mearsheimer. He's a realist. He came here down to the you had to talk with him, and you asked him a question about Indonesia. Tell the viewers what the question about Indonesia was and what his reply was, which was super surprising.
Yeah, well, as an American, I guess he focuses on America has a lot on its plate. There's a lot to focus on. Indonesia's Australia's problem, not America's. So when I asked him, I said, East Timor, you guys didn't come and help us out. Indonesia's far more powerful than they used to be. And there seems to be we seem to be in an arms race with Indonesia. If you count everything that they have, it's almost exactly the same size as what we have. Is Indonesia on our side or is Indonesia on China's side? And he said, he did this with his shoulders, like, I hope they're on our side. And I realized what we're in for at that stage. I realized that if we don't put together our own think tanks and figure out what's going on with Indonesia, and that's why when I went over to Indonesia myself, every single person that I asked, do you like China or America more? 100% of the people who work in the shops, the taxi drivers, concierge, anybody I could get my hands on, 100% said that they would prefer to be with China. So this is the way it's playing out, and it's not looking too pretty. It just seems like we're just blindly, step by step, walking into something that cannot be stopped. I'd like to send a lot of Australian diplomats over to Indonesia and let them know, look, if we go toe to toe, China's going to trade with both of us and then just pick up the pieces at the end of it, the same way the Americans did at the end of World War II, and that's their game plan. And that's not going to look pretty for Indonesia or Australia.
Yeah.
But I'm not advising Scott Morrison.
Well. Hopefully you do. They're trying to build the Ramsey Center for Western civilization. Hopefully one day they'll get that built. But I think you should be the director of an anti-China lobby or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But you should be some sort of director in some sort of position of power to help us on this, because it's an alarming thing. And I hate there is a growing sense of anti-Americanism out there, but we need these guys. We love these guys. There are any defense against this, and I'll tell you what, I'd rather have them on our team than China. I mean, we speak the same language, we have the same cultural values, we watch their TV, we consume their food. We're much better natural friends with those guys than we ever would be with China. China is encircling us as it is. It would be it'd be a stupid idea to ever run away because of what you were saying before, because of these arrogant financiers, and try and bed down with China, a culture and a civilization we do not understand and have no idea what's going on.
Well, this brings up another topic. How many banks do we have that are American run? The SWIFT system, the finance system, it's all American. If we just pick China's side, people say, oh, we rely on China so much because they're buying our coal. If they buy Indonesia's coal and they refuse to buy our coal, what do? It pops up somewhere else. Someone needs to buy coal somewhere else. We can replace China. Dare I say it? We cannot replace the Chinese university students. We cannot do that, but we can replace our exports because we are a resource-rich country. And if you think about it from the situation with selling oil with OPEC and Saudi Arabia, who do you think has the leverage in that situation? Is it OPEC? Is it Saudi Arabia? Or is it America? It's definitely Saudi Arabia because they're selling it. They can choose not to sell it anymore, and they'll put America in an awful position. See, we're in that position right now. China hates us, but they're buying our coal and they're buying our resources because they need it, even though they hate us. They cannot actually touch us for a multitude of reasons. But if we chose China over America, America would just shut down our finance industry overnight. All of those finance gurus that love reading graphs and love reading data and thinking about the Phillips curve, which is totally irrelevant, and talking about John Maynard Keynes, which is not really exactly what's going on at the moment because they know nothing about economics, and they arrogantly attack the RBA because they don't really understand that we need to kick the can down the road. There's so many dummies out there that don't really understand that we have Bank of China, but every other bank will just totally dissolve into nothing if America cuts us off. And they just have no idea the difference. And it's not just security. Economically, we rely on America for so much more. Not to mention, I can say whatever I want about Orange Man, but if I say Pooh Bear, I get locked up over there. So I would rather be able to say whatever I want about Trump and get away with it than have an authoritarian regime put an extradition bill on Sydney. I'll be the first to go.
Yeah, and and you reminded me of a great quote of what John Mishai said, and he says, "You're feeding the beast. Do you want to keep feeding the beast?" Yeah. And I thought that was a perfect way of explaining it, because that's what you're doing. You're feeding. It's like this Stockholm syndrome, or you're feeding a beast. Yeah, you're feeding a beast that eventually wants to devour you and take it all. So so that's really. I'll put this last question to you because I want to know. I really want to hit you on this one. Does Australia need nuclear weapons? Yes or no, David Lee?
If we had nuclear weapons today, and nothing would have changed in the future when someone will have the ability to put sanctions on us. We would have had it all along. But if China does become the next hegemon, and then we go, oh, we need nuclear weapons. Now China can do the same thing that they're doing to the Hong Kong people right now and say, Australia wants to nuke us, and then they can use that as an excuse. China has this strategy of victim blaming, which is America's game as well. Look, they did something to us, so we have the right to invade them. But if we had nuclear weapons right now, no one would be able to say anything about it in 20 years' time when we might actually need them for defense. And we don't have the population to defend ourselves. We just need a deterrent. This isn't something. We're not going to be shooting nukes. Keep in mind, uh, the distance between Sydney and Beijing is the same distance as Beijing from the middle of Europe. Like, just to
Yeah.
understand the distance between them. Like, I can literally ride a bike from from one part of Europe to the other end, but the distance between Sydney to China is quite. If you get on Google Maps and you actually measure it out, it's quite a long distance. But it would be a defensive play because we just don't have the ability to defend ourselves in any other means. We just don't have the means to do that, especially when every other country has such large populations. And if they wanted to do something to us, we would have no other means. And it's cheap and easy. Just to, as Hugh White has said, he said, look, if we just have submarines rotating around Asia, it's cheap. It's the same as what the UK does. They have submarines constantly rotating, and they have nuclear weapons on them. And it's not an offensive play; it's a defensive play. It's like, okay, you do anything to us, you don't know where they're going to come from. They could come from anywhere in the sea. So don't mess with us. That's pretty much it. And the finance guys will like that as well because it's cheap, firstly, and secondly, they can still trade. We just don't have the threat. So if you start commandeering our trade ships, which if I was a malevolent actor in Asia, I'd just be taking. You want the coal? I'll just take the whole ship. I'll be commandeering ships. They would think twice about that if we have submarines under the ground. They don't know where the nukes are going to come from.
Yeah, that's really good. And also, I saw in your news wrap up, because your channel is really, really good. And I saw in your news wrap up, there's this proliferation of cars going around Australia. I saw some in Perth. I've seen some in Sydney, etc. And they've got the one was a police vehicle. It was a Chinese police vehicle. Another one had Chinese like Deng Xiaoping and Xi Jinping and Karl Marx. What's going on with this weird art on cars, or this fake police vehicles, or what's going on with all this?
I think it's a form of intimidation because that's the ambition of a lot of Chinese people in Australia. There's a lot of good Chinese in Australia, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of malevolent actors out there that would love Australia to just shift over to China's team. And it's a form of intimidation. Driving a Chinese police car, which is just painted to look like a Chinese police car, it's a form of intimidation. And the mentality also, for the Australian viewers out there, they would understand this mentality. We have this underdog mentality, right? We've always had it, but now we're looking down as if like we are superior. China has that underdog mentality, and it's as if we've forgotten what it's been like to be the underdog. They got the fire, they got the testosterone flowing through their blood. They're ready to take on the world, and we're not. We're playing defense. We're not setting the rules in Australia. These type of cars, they should be just commandeered. Also, one more thing. This is a very good point that I'd like to make.
Yeah.
I know whenever I talk to you, we end up covering way too much. But
I know it's good. I love it. I endorse it.
This is so damn important. The amount of times I hear people saying, I'm worried about Chinese investment in Australia. There was a law that came into play in 2018, which has been in America for a very long time, is that if you're a Russian oligarch and you want to get money out, right? You want to get your money out of Russia so that you can invest abroad, or you can get your children out, things like that. You can't just keep the money within your country and expect to have a prosperous life, especially in these type of authoritarian regimes. So what they do is they try to get their money out, and the Americans have been trying to track them down. And what they do is they take the money. They literally just freeze the accounts, $1 billion straight into America's. The government just takes it. Now, all of this investment that China has been investing in Australia, we think that, okay, we just hand it over. But no, what if something happens? All of those billions of dollars from China that's coming into Australia, this is effectively our ransom for them. And I like to think that the Australian government is on top of this, but this is also a warning to all the Chinese people out there that like to throw their weight around. You might lose your house, you might lose your millions of dollars that you've invested in Australia if you want to start throwing your weight around and messing with our country. And if something was to go down and we were to get into some sort of a serious war with, say, Taiwan, every country that China has invested money in, it's all just going to go straight into that country. They're going to send you back poor. I guess what I mean is a lot of the capital flight coming out of China, because money can't buy you clean air, money can't buy you freedom, money can't buy you a lot of things that it doesn't matter how rich you are in China, your standard of living cannot compare to what you got when you move to Australia. Now, a lot of those people, they come down here and they want to beat up Hong Kong protesters in the streets and they've got millions of dollars. Well, I'm not saying why don't we. I bet the money-hungry Western countries would be thinking about this already, and this would be like an ace up their sleeves. If there's billionaires in China that send their children abroad, they buy houses, they get citizenship, and they send billions of dollars out of China. All of those accounts, if China pushes their luck too much with all of our countries, all of those accounts will be frozen. You'll be on the next plane back home empty-handed. And all of the debt that China thinks that they own with all the bonds that they have in America, that will be wiped. Everything will just reset. And so a lot of these economists that are out there worried about the debt, they're not thinking 3D, 4D. They're not able to have not only two conflicting ideas in their head or 10 conflicting ideas in their head going at once and looking at everything that's happening as well. They're not able to understand that we have a multitude of levers that we can pull, and you putting your money in my country gives me leverage over you.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
this is a beautiful point, because you're Gary Kasparov, you're a chess champion, and it's a big chess game, right? And that's what's going on. And I was actually reading a global wealth index, and it was talking about the amount of Chinese billionaires and millionaires that were leaving, and there was a huge number, about 1% of their billionaires and millionaires are able to leave every year. It's the biggest proportion in the world, so they are fleeing, and for these reasons that you stated, they're leaving because they want more freedom, they want better education outcomes, they want a diversity of language so they integrate with the global economy better, they want better health outcomes for their children with clean air and all that sort of stuff. So they're leaving for a bunch of reasons.
Well, I did do some research on what happened in 1997. A lot of the Hong Kong people fled and they took their money out of their bank accounts in 1997. A lot of them came to Australia, and guess where they moved? They moved to Chatswood, and they set up 4,000 Hong Kong people moved to Chatswood. Now, these people were speaking Cantonese, but these days the people have moved to Chatswood all speak Mandarin, so they're being replaced by Mandarin speakers from the mainland. So most Australians aren't able to tell the difference, so that's why they're able to get away with that.
That's creepy. The Chinese government is chasing these people for something they did years ago.
And so now there's a lot of people talking about Australian property market. Where do you buy property when Hong Kong's in a lot of trouble and people have... There's been a bank run in Hong Kong, by the way. I don't know if you know about that, but there's been a huge bank run. A lot of the protesters have realized that they can harm the mainland by just withdrawing all of their money. And a lot of the people in Hong Kong are looking to leave. Guess where they're going to go? Chatswood and North Sydney. So if you're thinking of a place to buy property in the upcoming years, and you're worried about the property bubble in all the other regions of Australia, Chatswood's where you buy property, because it is only going up. Not to mention the fact that Gladys Berejiklian, who became the Premier, not to mention the fact that she's right next to Chatswood, and she runs...
No names, remember? No names.
Oh, no, well, I didn't say anything bad.
No, that's all right. Yeah. Continue.
but this metro that you put in goes comes from north of Hornsby, somewhere up there, but it ends in Chatswood. So they're driving traffic to Chatswood, and almost all the businesses in Chatswood are run by Chinese Communist Party or Chinese people that speak Mandarin, and that's where the Bank of China and Huawei and all those companies that we don't really want in this country, they're all in Chatswood. So if you want to have a return on your, you want to buy some property, you want to have a return on it, I would be buying it in Chatswood or very close to Chatswood, because that's one place where a lot of the Hong Kong people will be buying property very soon, because a lot of they often go where other Hong Kong people were or other Chinese people are.
Yeah, and you made an interesting point before about people talking about debt, because it's interesting because, like, an economist, he only thinks about economics, and the geopolitical strategist like yourself, that economics is only a subset of. You have to think about the arms, you have to think about geography, you have to think about demographics, you have to think about the finance, you have to think about the weather conditions, you have to think about the internet, you have to think about everything. I mean, it's so much privacy, social stuff. I mean, there's so much going on. So
I love the complexity of it all. And do you remember our private conversation where I mentioned August?
Yeah.
I told you August was going to be a bad time for our finance industry. We've had two massive hits on the ASX. And when I saw it on the news, I thought, oh, I wish I made that video a few days earlier.
I can confirm that. That Dave here did in fact prophesy, guess, estimate, conceptualize the crashes in the markets that we've seen.
Speaking of all the different factors, there's another factor. If you go back to my first ever video, I'm talking about dating. Now, I believe that dating is another factor. I know it sounds outrageous, but this is just the way I see the world. I see the world, and
it's all warfare.
Everything is connected, and I know, Scarface. First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women. Now, what has happened with China is a lot of Taiwanese women are choosing to date Chinese men. So Taiwanese women are selling out their own country to the Chinese men because they don't have faith in their own country. So geopolitics, women in general, not all women, but in general, they look for resources and power in a man. And you can often, and if everybody's dating and everyone's getting married and everyone's getting together, and you watch the dating patterns of the women, that will help you to understand what organically is happening to a country. You see what I'm trying to say here. So when you look at in the past, would have someone like Bob Carr married a Chinese girl, she was following the power. Now it's flipping the other way around, and in a way it doesn't seem like white women are following the power anymore. And so therefore they're not really a good asset to us, if you know what I'm trying to say. Asian men, white women is not that common, although it does happen. It's not that common. I would love to have an Australian model dating or married to Xi Jinping. It would really make our life a lot easier down here, but they're letting us down. I hate to say it. And if you look at my first ever video, it was, would you date a Chinese guy? It's because the power of dating. Men build massive monuments, and in the back of their head, they're thinking, this is going to help me get laid. Not all, but let's just be realistic. Yeah. Men often do a lot of stupid things to impress women, and getting money and power, and then getting the women. It's like Scarface. It is quite. Men go out and get PhDs thinking that that's going to impress women, and they find out that it didn't really work. But this is the human condition, and so you can watch dating.
So you're saying here that Taiwan, like the women aren't really thinking nationalist in these countries. They're thinking they're just going where the money and power is, and unfortunately they undermine their own sovereignty and in the process.
Or it's just it's just some data. It's something for you to acknowledge that women go with the superior male. And if they don't believe that Taiwanese men are in control or they feel safe there, and they feel safer with a Chinese man, that tells you a lot more about what's going on behind the scenes.
And
if you know what
it's
I'm
so
saying.
interesting. It's so interesting because Mark Zuckerberg has, I think, a Chinese wife. Rupert Murdoch has a Chinese wife. And a whole host of Silicon Valley is white men and Asian women. Chinese especially, and Japanese, but Chinese. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't go the other way. It's not like I don't see everywhere I go a whole lot of white women and Asian men. It just doesn't really happen.
It's not a coincidence that these rich American men are with Chinese women, because they've chosen what they thought would be the most superior and wealthy and powerful man that they could get their hands on. Unfortunately, the other way around, this gives an incentive to a lot of angry Asian men in Western countries, which have an incentive to overthrow the Western society and hegemony. Yeah. And this is why you see a lot of people talking about white supremacy. It has nothing really to do about that. They're scared to get angry at white women for rejecting them, so they take it out on the white men. You either have... There's only so many strategies that you can have. You can improve yourself, or you can eliminate the competition. So right now we're going through a period where a lot of Asian men are trying to eliminate the competition, and it's also international as well. So this is another factor which drives everything. So when I'm looking at things and I come up with these crazy harebrained, I put it all together. I'm holding 50 different conflicting ideas that are going on at once.
The other thing is, China is exploding. Andrew Hastie, he opened this debate up in the Australian sphere, and so now China is exploding. All of a sudden, Dave Lee is the most wanted man in Australia because you've been at the center of this, and I want to keep encouraging you to be brave and keep going on with this. But
I made a video saying that is China a fascist state. I've actually got that video up there, so it was already up there. So Andrew Hastie, I beat you to the punch on that one.